Welcome to another episode of Three Pete After Me, as we have a special guest this week from the Rays front office. Director, minor league operations for the Rays, George Pappas, is our guest. He's one of the architects, if you will, of the River Dogs championship three-peat and the 2024 River Dogs. He'll talk about that, all of those championship teams, and some special places to check out if you would visit each of the Rays minor league affiliates on today's episode. Well, George, thanks so much for stopping by the podcast. We've had this going now for a few months. Took a little bit of a break as the season got underway, but this is our second one of the season, and thanks so much for stopping by.
I appreciate the invite. Glad to finally do it.
I want to start with, and we're going to touch on a number of things here, both with the Rays, the River Dogs, the prospects, and the way the farm system has looked the last few years, and also your time in radio, which I'm really excited to broach at some point. But let's just start out from the beginning as this relationship began. It's obviously been a great relationship between the Rays and the River Dogs with a lot of success that people see from the outside on the field. But maybe if you can take me back to the first time that you came to the Joe and this partnership kind of got renewed again in 2021 and what you liked about Charleston from the outside looking in before you had really been a part of that.
So for starters, obviously the Rays were affiliated with the River Dogs, from the late 90s into the mid-2000s. Some changes in affiliation. We're not here anymore. The one constant in a lot of that, the Gold Clang family, long-time partners of ours, both here and in Hudson Valley. And with so many unknowns with the restructuring of minor league baseball and after 2020 going into 2021, one, to have some familiarity with the people that we're working with and with partnership in this was pretty huge. Charleston as a city itself, don't have to do a whole lot of selling to our group on the benefits of being here. Everybody among our player development staff, as well as our front office, our scouting groups and things, really, really enjoy coming here. It's a highlight for anybody who gets to come through Charleston because of all the wonderful things to see, do, and eat here in town. And I think all of us also appreciate the environment for our players and staff. People come in here and pack the Joe every night, and that's what a way to start for most of our player group who do start here at among the full season clubs. Pack it in, and it's just an electric atmosphere to start your minor league career. So for me, first time coming through, actually my first visit to Charleston was a site visit in 2021 before the season, just to do a walkthrough with Dave and Ben and to meet some of the people here and get a feel for in advance of the season. And I loved it. I love the park. The vibe. It's beautiful. The sight lines are great. Looking out over the Pluff Mud out back, from the Seger Club.
Wait a second. What's that? The Pluff Mud. That's not a real thing.
It's a real thing. I learned that yesterday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. Wow. You're really a Charleston guy now, huh?
I suppose. We've been here now 3 years, so at least for me.
All right. I'm glad that you learned that one.
I learned that last night.
That's
during
great.
The seventh inning of our game.
Yeah. Okay.
Dave taught me something.
Did you get the odor from that?
No.
It does have a distinct smell.
It does.
So when it's there, it's there. Anyways,
I came into town this trip a little congested. We have a 2-year-old, and he brings home every other week from school, with a developing immune system. Dad occasionally gets the sniffles, and I'm on the tail end of that right now.
All right. I'm sorry. I interrupted your answer. You were talking about the Pluff Mud and the marsh as part of the environment here in Charleston.
You know what? Looking over the water, and it's like this will be good. This will be real good for us.
Awesome. Well, I think that this level, and Smed has talked about it before. You've talked about it. Jeff has talked about it. Blake's talked about it. Nowadays, without rookie ball, this is kind of the first test in front of fans, under the lights, traveling, playing series against one team because of the complex. You're playing a lot of day games. You're playing one team one day, then another team. And so it's the first real look at a professional baseball environment. So how exciting is it at the start of each year, or really at any point in each year, when new players show up here in Charleston to see what exactly they do under the lights, quote unquote?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I mean, all of us who are as intimately involved in putting together our system and individual player plans, you have a high level of personal investment. And, for as much as all of us prepare. The humbling thing about working in this, like our guys have to go out and perform and be comfortable. And I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point. Like comfortable failing and learning from failure. A game, as it's oftentimes said, you fail 7 out of 10, you're an all-star. Offensively, and in an environment like this with a ton of fans and it's loud and people want to win the game and things of that nature, like you're hanging on to the edge of your seat, hoping that our guys are going to perform and really trying to make sure that we are putting them in the best, in the best position to learn, to grow, to develop, to compete, and all that. And there's just no telling how it's going to happen. We've had a lot of, we have enjoyed a lot of success while guys have developed, and it's been cool to see how everybody here has embraced that. But for the first time out, it's I couldn't think of a better spot for our group to cut their teeth at the full season level under the lights.
We'll talk a little bit more about the 3 teams that have been really special that have come through here, and then this year's team a little bit as well. But I wanted to start with you and how maybe your passion for baseball developed. Did you always know? I think everybody wants to be a player at one point in their life, but did you always know that you wanted to be part of a baseball front office or maybe player development specifically, or where did your love for the game and then your love for the current role grow?
Wanted to play. Wasn't very good. Couldn't stay healthy. And, I wanted to be a catcher in high school. I had surgery my junior year on my elbow. Orthopedic surgeon and my parents both were like, hey, look, you probably should give consideration to you can have a career in baseball without playing.
Sure.
And I hadn't really given that a whole lot of thought. And you may roll your eyes at what is about to come out of my mouth next, but I, at the time, considered the path of least resistance to a career in the game via broadcasting.
Yep. There you go.
So I went to the University of Florida intent on being a broadcaster, wanting to do play-by-play. To answer your prior question about the love for the game and some of that stuff, I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm 32. I was born in 1991. At the time, the Indians, now Guardians, were moving into a brand new facility downtown. Then Jacobs Field, 1994, they opened. I was 2.5 years old going to my first game, and their move into a new ballpark timed up with their resurgence of what was, probably one of their best eras in franchise history. And so I grew up watching some Hall of Fame players that were together. They had a solid core that had a lot of success, and frankly, go to the World Series '95, they lost to a really good Atlanta team. The one Atlanta team that ended up winning after all those years. Go to the World Series again in '97, losing Game 7 to the Marlins. I would debate with my dad over time just how good those teams were historically, because in my mind as a young kid, as a young fan, the likes of Jim Thome or Manny Ramirez or an Albert Bell, et cetera, those teams, those lineups, for me as a young fan, you could have been talking about Babe Ruth, and Lou Gehrig, and all of those Yankee teams of old. And it happened to be right after my freshman year of college. I did a little project just on my own, just buy some time over summer, and I started actually digging in, with some of the numbers. And at the time, I was pursuing this career and wanted to do play-by-play.
Yeah,
and I was covering the Rays for ESPN Radio, Gainesville, Ocala, and Jacksonville, St. Augustine. Was not getting paid. It was, hey, actually, the whole thing materialized in a way where they wanted somebody to cover the college football recruiting beat. UF 2009 going in 2010 had the #1 recruiting class in the country. And the whole deal for me was, hey, we want you on the college football recruiting beat. And ended up producing a National Signing Day show and got the #1 recruit in the country basically via Facebook at the time. I shot him a note on Facebook.
Who was it?
Ronald Powell. He actually just passed away.
Okay. Wow.
Earlier this year, sadly. But Ronald Powell ended up committing to Florida, defensive end. And I shot him a note. I didn't think he was going to respond. He did. I said, hey, would love to have you on our National Signing Day show to talk about committing to the Gators and signing with the Gators. And I did all this work for free.
Yeah.
And my boss, our show host at the time, a guy still on occasion we'll talk to, Mark McLeod. I said, look, I'd love to continue to do work here, and I'd like to get something I'd like to kind of take my career in this other direction. And, if you can't pay me for the work, then can I get maybe some reps doing this other thing? And fortunately was able to get a credential, start covering baseball, and ended up running into people that were affiliated with Cleveland's organization and their run in the 90s, and kind of bouncing some of these ideas about what I thought about their success. And that turned into a book. So I ended up writing this book called A Tribe Reborn, about really how through player development and scouting they were able to build the framework of what you could make the argument was a 90s dynasty that just didn't get over the top.
Sure.
Fully. The relationships that we developed in putting the book together, halfway through the writing process, some of these guys that were intimately involved, at the time, they're two of their former general managers, a scouting director, a farm director, some of their major league staff, some of the players that were at that point retired players, started asking me, hey, have you given any consideration to maybe working in the front office? And I hadn't given it a second thought. I didn't play past high school, didn't play very much in high school, certainly didn't play college, didn't play professionally, and I just did not think naively. I had not read Moneyball at that point, for that matter. So I'm like, what opportunities are there for somebody with my skill set to be in the front office and making baseball decisions? And a lot has happened since then, but I'm grateful for how it kind of cosmically took, find yourself in the right place at the right time.
Was that book on every bookshelf in Cleveland at some point in time?
The one thing that I will say is the day that it came out, Amazon has their book lists, if you will. And on the one day that it came out, it got to like number 3 on their baseball books. It actually got higher than Moneyball for a day.
Wow. Is that on your resume?
It's not.
It's not. That's hard to believe.
I don't often talk about this.
Right. I didn't know it until now, but that's awesome. I didn't realize you had that up your sleeve too. I'm waiting for the sequel then.
There is no planned sequel right now.
Okay. So. Well, that's fine. We've got time. There's time to put that one together. So then, with an experience a little bit in radio, I know you watch a lot of games. So how much do you judge us, the minor league broadcasters in the Rays farm system? Are you kind of under your breath going, man, I would have called that play a lot better? You can be honest.
I have a lot of respect for the job, and especially across the minor leagues with some of the challenges of trying to put on a broadcast. So to say judge, I'd say I probably judge with some grace.
Okay.
Baked in.
You're a kind judge.
Having said that, it's like when it's really good, it stands out, and when it's not, it also stands out.
All right.
So.
All right.
I'm biased, I think, really highly of all of our broadcasters across our system. And I don't know if that's because I listen to a lot and I watch a lot of our games, and you just kind of get familiar with the different voices and what have you. But I like the group that we have.
Our good friend Sean Mernon just made his big league debut as well. Did you see that? The old Bowling Green broadcaster. So congrats to him. I think, being part of the Rays player development system has got to be in some ways sort of a badge of honor. I don't know if it looks that way from the inside, but whenever anybody talks about the Tampa Bay Rays, one of the first few things they bring up, not only success and doing so in a unique way, is how good the farm system is year in and year out. From the inside of that, do you guys realize that, or are you just trying to do your job the best that you can?
We take a lot of pride in the job that we do. And I think we also really push ourselves to not rest on our laurels and to challenge ourselves so that we, I guess the best way I can put it, we don't want to be biased and just like constantly tell ourselves, hey, like we have the very best players doing everything right.
Okay.
We're very critical in a constructive way of the work that we're trying to do, and try to be, again, constructively critical of our evaluation of our players and the way that we teach, so that it'd be really easy to say, oh, we have the best players, and to just fixate on the group that we have. It helps to be able to try to contextualize some of that against like competition. You stare across the field. When I go around different places, I love watching the other clubs do their work, their pregame work, and sort of, not to say that we're trying to measure ourselves against the standard across the field, but it does help to check yourself a little bit as a group, and I think we do a fair amount of that as well. But it does feel good. We take a lot of pride in the job that we do. We're always talking about players like nonstop. How can we get them better? because we have to do this well to be a successful organization.
So I think the thing that people maybe don't realize is if you're a baseball fan on the outside or a casual fan, you're like, oh, the River Dogs are good this year. It means the Rays have a ton of prospects, or they're struggling, and it means maybe they don't. But that's not necessarily the case. You can have a great farm system talent-wise and just not have that many winning teams. But to do both for as long as you have being part of the Rays organization, I don't think people realize how unique it is to have really good players, but then also really good teams, meaning everybody in a 30-man roster is at least carrying their weight and doing something positive to help win a championship. Like, how cool is that to be part of, to watch those guys, get to the major leagues at some point, but also win at every level getting to that point?
It's deeply gratifying. It's humbling. And, again, we have to check ourselves a little bit just so that we don't get in a habit of quote-unquote ring chasing across the minor leagues, because winning can cover up, as far as like true development goes, winning can cover up, some of the deficiencies and things. Like we have players here today who have, I'll use pitching as means of an example. Some of the pitchers that are here today, the quality of the fastball alone can get a lot of outs. They'll miss a lot of bats with just their fastball alone, and that's great. If they don't, at the same time, though, start to try to develop some of their secondary pitches, then their ceiling becomes to be a really good low A pitcher, and that's it. So, I was here opening night. I saw Santiago Suarez pitch really, really, really well. It was fastball heavy. He pitched really well. Last night's game here, he mixed in other pitches, and he got hit around a little bit, which is, you lose the game. I'm not going to say that, I'm sure fans don't like to hear it. Like, fans want to see the River Dogs win every night, as do we. We'd like to develop and win at the same time, and you're not always able to do that. Sometimes a guy has to go and throw some changeups, work on the breaking ball. It might get hit. You might miss the zone a bunch, and if it means the next time out he's going to be more confident, have more conviction in throwing that pitch, and then get outs that time and make him a better pitcher to be a consideration to move up and to move up and to move up. Like that's really our job. But to bring it back around to the success, and one of our big mantras is, hey, we believe in winning as a byproduct of proper development. And it is hard to win, and it's hard to develop, and it's hard to do it at the same time. And to be able to have had the organizational success across all four and the complex, and then certainly here winning back to back to back, it's special, it's humbling, it's something we do not take for granted. As easy as it is for it to sort of become like, to feel like habit and almost take it like, oh, you know what, we're going to go in, we're going to win, we're going to win some hardware, and I think some of us probably have a level of expectation. I will say in the same breath, it's really cool in spring training when we had a day all of our games got canceled because of rain.
Yeah,
we banged them early, and we asked Josh Lowe and Shane McClanahan and Renee Pinto to come in and talk to our players about, these are three guys that have come through our system and basically played at every level. And granted, before we had the River Dogs in the current setup, but guys that had played at every level and were impacting our major league club. And one of the things that our players who are homegrown tell our group is, hey, like, you guys learn to win everywhere. You're going to go out on the field and you're going to learn to beat the team on the other side of the field at every level. And I do think that there's this culture of expectation. Like, I do believe winning is a skill.
Yeah,
that's where I'm going with it. I believe winning is a skill, and winning culture can be infectious, and it becomes a part of the fabric of the group. And I think that beats the alternative.
Oh, no doubt. I would agree from my position as well. It's a little bit more fun when the team's playing good baseball. The fans like it a little bit more, but like you said, ultimately the goal is to develop it. And something you touched on earlier, you talked about failure and seeing how guys respond to that and having that first experience. Is it more telling, and I think I know your answer, but is it more telling when somebody is going well, then fails for the first time, and bounces back at another level than it is to watch somebody just cruise through a season and not necessarily be tested at some point? Like, are you looking forward, you don't want a guy to fail, but to see maybe something goes wrong for him or he goes through a tough month or a stretch and then is able to come back as a better player on the other side?
I think that we learn a lot about our players when they have those moments. I think, look, I can't speak for our player group, but I want to believe that our players learn a lot about themselves. And a lot of what we talk about in development is wanting to make sure that our players, by the time they've gotten to the big leagues, are going to be able to do or will have done things and have experienced things that we are going to ask of them once they get up the trop, or in this case down to the trop.
Right.
That they're not doing something for the first time there, and I think we would extend that to failure because, look, I can appreciate that it'd be really cool for a player to never experience failure across the minor leagues,
That'd be
and
great.
then never experience it in the big leagues. You're talking about a really special kid in that, player in that. But realistically, I mean, even the very best prospects are going to fail, and all things considered, would like for them to learn how to manage that in the minor leagues when the stakes are like effectively lower versus when you have to win the day every day in the big leagues. And the jump, you can make the argument that the jump from the minor leagues to the big leagues has never been bigger for some. We think we know that in some of the way that we perceive pitching and the quality of pitching and things of that nature. Also, just with the way that development system has changed, like guys are going to have to finish their development in the big leagues. Today, we really do believe that, and they need to be equipped to handle failure by the time they've gotten there. Because if they're dealing with it for the very first time and the stakes are that high, that could be a recipe for, that could be really, really, really difficult.
And I think as we transitioned into some of the championship teams at this level, especially as players are going through that, maybe for the first time, the manager at this level is so important in the coaching staff. And I just wanted you to touch on briefly what Blake did in 2 years here and then transitioning to Sean Smedley, who was the bench coach for the 2021 championship. And two guys that don't like to lose, but are great with the players. They're personable people. And I thought that was really notable last year when, the Riverdogs were in last place in the first half and by the end of the year playing the best baseball in the league. But what can you say about the managers that we've been fortunate enough to have here in Charleston?
They're both longtime colleagues and, frankly, like baseball friends of mine at this point. I mean, Smed, I've known my first year in this organization was 2013. I was an intern with us in our complex. Sean was an undrafted free agent. We have spent time in the bullpen together, catching sides side by side, in what can be a really thankless job. And he's a baseball rat, and I think really, really highly of him. And same, Blake, similar deal. We've been together for a long time. He was a release out of minor league spring training in 2017, and then a week or two later, we're onboarding him as a developmental coach, and it's been really a pleasure for me to be able to support both of those guys as they've moved in their careers and so forth, and as they are leaders of some of our players and our staff, and they get there in different ways the way that they go about it. But I think you boil down a lot of the qualities and things that are important to them are shared, in that they can both be really even keel. They're not going to be over. They're not going to you can look at the dugout. You can watch them in the third base coaching box or at their post on the top step, and they're the same guy every day. Internally, that might not be the case, but what they put out there for the staff, what they put out there for the players, is consistent. And given how long the year is, and just the ups and downs, we talk about riding the roller coaster over the course of a long season. They do a really good job of keeping themselves in check, which I think, they model that for the rest of the staff. They model that for the players, and that's huge, especially at this level where it's still so foundational. So there's that, and they're wonderful teachers. I mean, like being in player development is about teaching, and they have different skill sets there, but they're passionate about it. They're very detail oriented, which again, just talking about this being a foundational level. I mean, they've been great at what they've been able to accomplish here.
So let's talk a little bit about that first team in 2021. I had done a whole offseason of preparation when I took this job on the Yankees farm system because we were a Yankees affiliate. The Rays come in. We found that out shortly as we were coming out of COVID in a way before the 2021 season started, but we weren't going to have playoffs that year, and it wasn't officially announced that there would be playoffs until June. So here the River Dogs are, not having won a championship in almost 100 years, and you're like, this is the best team maybe in team history record-wise as they were trending, but what are we going to play for at the end here, and where there'll be a championship? And all of a sudden they make the announcement, and you looked around at the guys we had and the way they were playing baseball, and it's like, okay, this is awesome that they're going to have a chance to go compete for a trophy and a ring in the end. But that team, if you look at now, and this is the ultimate goal of minor league baseball, Curtis Mead, who wasn't really a huge name at the start of that season. Oslevis Basabe was there. You had Brett Wisely, who's played other places. Taj Bradley was part of the team. Angel Felipe. All of those guys have gone on to play really high-level baseball. But what do you remember maybe about the 2021 River Dogs, knowing at the same time that you had 3 different affiliates win a championship that year?
Just dominant. I mean, going basically end to end of the season with, I don't want to say little doubt, but just a lot of talent. Like, I think, more than the average fan. I mean, we're with these guys every day from the beginning of the year to the end, and trying to personalize their development plans. So, like, a lot of anticipation, maybe privately as an organization, about the group, and a lot of excitement. And then to actually, I kind of alluded to it before. I mean, your players have to go play, and it's really hard. So even when you have really high expectations, some of those guys certainly exceeded them over the course of that year, and it was very special to watch how it came together for the group as a whole, and then with some distance from it, to look up and down the roster and the number of guys who have either been in the big leagues, are currently in the big leagues, or are on 40-man rosters, having had, few previously, and obviously a number of years since we were here. We come here, we do the site visit. There's Aaron Judge, there's Gary Sanchez, a bunch of Yankee names and faces around the building, and kind of making the joke, hey, we got to see less Yankee stuff in here and more Rays stuff in here, but also appreciating that, all right, we haven't been here in a long time, and they are a part of the River Dogs history. Overall, we've been able to add some big league names in pretty short order, and some of that starts with the success that was had here in 2021.
Yeah, and so that 2021 team kind of set the table for the three-peat, obviously, by nature. But come back the next year, and we talked about how dominant pole-to-pole the 2021 team is. I thought that was probably about as good of a season as you could get. And then the 2022 team comes out and breaks the team record for wins, for winning percentage, and yet still didn't make the playoffs in the first half because there was one team a game better in the same division of the same league. Just kind of bad luck there. But that group was obviously highlighted at the time by Carson Williams. J.J. Goss pitched really well down the stretch. Bob Seymour had a great season. Austin Vernon kind of burst onto the scene. But another group that I remember talking to you that year, that 2021, you guys were still trying to figure out, what does the Carolina League look like now? What age players or what experience level do we send there? And you said, like, we purposely made the 2022 group a little bit younger just to test guys and see how they performed. You felt like that was more accurate to the league, and you had to be really happy with the results.
Well, we were definitely happy with the result. After, I think there's a few years of recalibrating with having the COVID year and things of that nature. We were as you said, we weren't exactly sure what low A to high A to double A were going to be like, and so forth. And I think some of how the 2022 team came together, some of it's by virtue of, talking about a younger team based on what we also drafted too, right? So, so that some of that I think is probably more incidental than anything, but all the same, I mean, that in the absence of two other levels where you'd maybe historically send some high school picks or some, in a normal draft year, like a high round high school pick might be in the Penn League.
No doubt.
In the past at that point. I mean, if it's in the old model, I mean, Carson might not be in low A, let's call it, at that time, but just the amount of growth, I think that's what made 22 special. And I'm not going to steal the thunder for what we'll talk about for 23 because it was even more so that. But what makes it special is when you put some guys in some spots that may be, in our old model, if you will, might not have been starting in in full season baseball, and they go out and they learn, they grow, they perform. I mean, we kind of laugh in hindsight talking about Carson. He got here, he'd never been really on a road trip before.
Right.
Hey, like, do we all get there together? Like, how do we get to the field? Like, things like that. So, just a ton of growth, certainly within the course of that year, and then the performance too. So,
And then let's talk about last year. And I think the unique thing about last year was it was the first team since 2007 when I was in high school. So that's when you know that it was a long time ago. The first time since 2007 that a team had finished in last place in a division or had the worst record in a league at the halfway point and then went on to win the championship. And every guy to a man all year, including Smed, said, we're going to be fine. We're going to be all right. And people around here who had been used to winning now all of a sudden out of nowhere 2 years in a row were like, what's wrong with the River Dogs? But you had Chandler Simpson. You had Xavier Isaac. The pitching was there. You just weren't winning games as regularly as we'd seen. Dom Keegan was having a great start to the year. And then it was the draft class in the end that's kind of boosted some life. And you mentioned it kind of sometimes depends on the draft. And there happened to be a lot of college hitters early on that year that Braden Taylor shows up, Trey Morgan for a little bit less time than we would have hoped, and then Colton Ledbetter, Brian Brecker, all played a big role down the stretch. But it was cool to see the guys who were with us all year, as good as those draft players were come playoff time. It was the guys who had been around all year, Barrete, Raudelis Martinez, who joined at the halfway point, that kind of pushed it over the top, and you end up with a championship win. Trevor Martin, Marcus Johnson. But how fulfilling is that as a member of a front office to watch a team that struggled and went through those battles and then always believed and eventually reached what they believed they could be?
I think personally that I'm the most proud of that of the 2023 team from that standpoint, because you go, as you said, like, what they had a lot of struggles in the first half. The staff, we had a lot of change on the staff, and the group had to do so much teaching from the first day of the season all the way to the very end. And to do all that, I mentioned that whole mantra about winning as a byproduct of development, and it doesn't always work out that way, that all of the failure and the learning moments and things align with actually going out and having the positive outcomes, winning the baseball game. But it's pretty sweet when it does, especially when you have had as many learning moments about how you are a professional, like how you go about it the right way, taking care of your business on and off the field, and things of that nature. So, and a lot of those guys are still here. I mean, that's just kind of a byproduct of where baseball is today, and some of our player group, maybe from Latin America, or some of the high school kids who, in the absence of other alternatives, from like the Appy League or the Penn League previously, there's no other spot for them to go, especially when you go in and you draft college players that are going to basically jump the line more or less. So that's going to help them this year too. So,
yeah, that was one of the most fun teams, one of the more fulfilling seasons from the outside, just kind of telling the story of the team that you're like, man, I remember Smed left the clubhouse in Myrtle Beach the last time we played them in the regular season. It was at Myrtle Beach in the first half, and the clubhouse guy was saying, like, hey, best of luck the rest of the season. And Smed, knowing that Myrtle Beach had won the first half, was like, oh, we'll be back. And sure enough, that was a self-fulfilling prophecy. We made it there and took them down in Game 3, and then obviously the rest is history. Just briefly, we don't want to keep you here all day. I know you're an important guy. You have all those things. Maybe start working on the second book. But, this year's team is very interesting as well. A young team. You look around the infield every day, and there's 2 or 3 19-year-olds out there who have a bright future, an 18-year-old as well. But what's really impressed me is the way they get on base and create havoc. They're second in minor league baseball in steals as a team. But what is, and then obviously the pitching, which you mentioned earlier. But this team, what are you excited to watch about this team as the season moves along?
How they make their adjustments, and all right, how quickly can you learn from failure, learn from the teaching moments, and then actually put the adjustment right into play? Are we going to repeat those adjustments? Are we going to repeat those mistakes over and over and over again, or do we have, do those players have the ability to take it, learn from it, put it right back into practice in the game the next day, so to speak, and see who learns and applies it faster than their other teammates? And then with that, how much opportunity are we going to have for them here versus being able to move move up the line. If the longer some of these guys are here and they're able to make those adjustments, and all of a sudden they're able to they feel more confident competing, we're going to see more wins here. Which again, I think there's the development piece of learning how to win and feeling good about that. But you mentioned some of the base stealing. We talk about being controlled aggressive right here and trying to push the envelope and learn how far you can push it and sort of throttle some of that stuff. I know Ronnie Richardson takes a ton of pride in, the guys have the green light, so to speak, to be able to go but learn from it. Be responsible. Take accountability for it. Make sure you're running in the right counts. Make sure you're running in the right game situation and not take the bat out of guys' hands in certain moments of things. So, there's stuff there that, as we put a team together and as we put these plans together for these guys, it's so much fun to watch. And then it's humbling because you have to sit back and let them go do it and let our staff teach and all that. So, and I think we're all confident that how this is going to look towards the end of the season with the group that's currently here is going to look, I think, better than how it does today. And that is exciting. And it's just, frankly, gratifying to watch how it happens and help to be involved in planning the how. Awesome.
We're looking forward to seeing how the rest of the season plays out as well. The guys know that there's been 3 championships in a row. They talk about it, and obviously that's quite a goal to set your sights at in a league that is as quality as this one. But we'll see what happens down the stretch. I want to end with a few rapid fire questions, if you will.
Sure.
Who was your favorite baseball player growing up?
Jim Thome.
Jim Thome.
Yep. Same birthday.
Really?
Yeah. He has 613 more home runs than me, though.
Well, so how many does that leave you with?
Big old 0.
0? None? High school?
Well,
I know you're talking professional, but you had to hit some.
I did not get on the board in high school.
I can't check it on Baseball Reference, so just say 5.
I'm telling you it's 0.
5 to 10. Okay. Fair enough.
It is
100% it's 0. A lot of doubles and triples, though. Yeah.
Not going to go there.
We've had 2 managers in Charleston with the Rays who don't get ejected very often. What's the best ejection you've seen in person?
Ooh.
Anybody stolen a base or anything like that?
I haven't seen any of that.
Okay.
I will say there are some moments when it comes to maintaining the credibility that our managers have with their players and staff when you basically know that you have to get run.
Right.
And so I will say, and I don't know if he's going to listen to or watch the podcast here, but Kevin Bowles 3 weeks ago maybe in Montgomery, umpires reversed a double play. It was a trap. I mean, I think everybody in the building except for the umpire who made the initial out call knew that the ball had been a trap rather than a catch.
Sure.
And it reversed what was a inning-ending double play, and Bowlesy, after the call was overturned, ran out there and very politely stated his case to the umpire, and it was a very brisk jog back to the dugout to applause. But it was just the most professional exchange I think I have ever seen, and it was very civil. And I think that how quickly he was sent out, and then how quickly he came off the field, and just very calm, cool, and collected. That was unique. That was a unique one.
Sean Smedley's really good at getting ejected at the very end of game 1 of a doubleheader so that he can just come right back out in a new uniform like 25 minutes later. I've appreciated that. He's really good about that. All right, first time you saw Chandler Simpson run in person, what were your thoughts?
This dude can fly. And a funny one, I went from the draft to Montgomery the year that we took him, and Greg Jones knew about just the base stealing prowess that Chandler has. And he's like, okay. All right. He's coming after, my bags, so to speak.
He's coming after everybody's, it turns out.
Pretty much.
All right, take us around. If people were going to check out the different affiliates with the Rays, if you had to talk about a place to go to eat or a special thing that you always are going to get when you go there, we'll start with an easy one, Charleston.
Okay. I like I like coffee, right? So
yes,
I do a lot of work out of coffee shops in all of our affiliate cities, and I typically have my go-to places. So for me, that's Kudu Coffee here. And then I like seafood. Had a phenomenal lunch today at 167 Raw.
Okay. How about Bowling Green, Kentucky?
Without question, it's Spencer's on the Square. It's their coffee spot. They've got in addition to really good coffee, a really good club sandwich and tomato soup.
Is that right by the ballpark there?
Yeah, you can walk.
Okay.
It's maybe 3 blocks.
It's been a few years since I've been there. How about Montgomery, Alabama?
Prevail Union is on your way from the ballpark, walking past the fountain, walk past the Rosa Parks statue on the way to the Capitol, and that is a mainstay for me.
Durham, North Carolina.
Press is a coffee place, and they do great crepes, and they're just beyond the left field. They're based right outside the left field corner.
Bonus question. I don't know if you've got a place there, but near the Academy in the Dominican Republic. Do you have a place?
There's a restaurant that we like to go to called Pepperoni.
Pepperoni?
It's not a pizza place either.
No.
The food's incredible.
What kind of food do they have?
Everything.
Everything.
All right. It's pretty high end. We seemingly run into David Ortiz every time we go.
Yeah, I don't think I would be welcome there then, probably. That'd be a tough one for me.
One of our staff, and I won't say who's on first name basis with the maitre d', and he'll just call.
Wow.
And be like, hey,
And it's not you?
It's not
You're
me.
just trying to.
Okay. It is not me.
Awesome. Well, that's good stuff. Now people know if they're going to take a tour of the Rays farm system, those are the places, so they can watch this forever and take those recommendations. But I know you've got a busy schedule when you're in town. Always good to catch up with you. But appreciate you stopping by, and thanks so much for what the Rays have done for the Charleston community.
Hey, we appreciate it. It's really a pleasure to be here. We appreciate the partnership and love it when the fans pack it in. It makes for the best environment for our players to develop.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Three Pete After Me. George providing some time for us in a very busy schedule on the road for him. Make sure you give us a like or comment on Facebook, X, or Instagram. If you have any guests that you'd like us to talk to, part of the current team, or who were part of the Three Pete, we'd love to hear from you and get your feedback. Till then, go Dogs, and we'll talk to you soon.